A single verse in Zechariah contains an extraordinary but little-known prophecy. Foretold over 2,500 years ago, it will be fulfilled very soon. It explains why the now deeply strained relationship exists between the United States and Israel, where there was once an unwavering alliance. World leaders, the media, and even supposed prophecy experts don't know this prophecy. This broadcast brings meaning to now faltering relations, along with why these two nations have enjoyed such a special and enduring friendship. Opening with bad news, the prophecy ends with the most wonderful good news. The highest drama is playing out toward breakup between America and Israel, with other Western nations involved. This cataclysmic event will soon rock America, Israel, and the West. One shocking event will first galvanize the whole world's attention. Shortly after will come the full blow-up, a complete rupture that is visible everywhere. You need to know what is coming and why. We are not political, nor do we take sides, ever. What follows is about history and prophecy, not politics. After watching this unique broadcast, you will never see the relationship between America and Israel the same. This will be among the most important 28 minutes of your life.
The world to come. The Restored Church of God presents David C. Pack.
We open with one verse. In the context of the end time, God says He will break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Almost everyone believes ancient Israel and Judah, the Jews, are the same. Yet two entities are described here. Brotherhoods require at least two brothers. Israel and Judah are in fact separate peoples. Few know that most of the tribes of Israel became lost to themselves in the world. Judah did not. This story involves both recent and ancient history. First, recent history. America and Israel have always stood by each other for better or worse. This alliance has been especially significant for Israel given its hostile neighbors. Only 2 of 22 Arab nations have formally recognized it. Through the decades, the pressures of wars, terrorist acts, differing religious ideologies, politics, and conflicting personalities have tugged at the ties that have bound America and Israel. However, the relationship has weathered every storm. United States presidents of both political parties have long championed America's special relationship with the Jewish people. But new challenges are testing the relationship. Distrust has been growing over recent years. Headlines reveal the now enormous rift. As White House Netanyahu spar over speech to Congress, the gloves come off. Netanyahu's speech will poke U.S. President in the eye, warn Israeli diplomats. Best foes forever, what really divides Obama and Netanyahu? Netanyahu's Iran speech in Congress is a recipe for an explosive U.S.-Israel clash. Netanyahu says West is comatose, delusional in face of today's Nazis, Iran. And the United States will not support Israel in the UN. With Israel election over, Netanyahu likely to remain thorn in Obama's side. The open loathing between Barack Obama and Benjamin Netanyahu just got worse. And finally, Netanyahu spat in our face, White House officials said. Two big points of contention have arisen and festered. One, the Palestinian people and new settlements within disputed areas of a future Palestinian state, and two, how to deal with Iran's nuclear program. To Israel, settlement building means providing housing for growing communities. To America and much of the world, these projects are a sign that Israel will not budge in peace negotiations with the Palestinians. In August 2013, an article in The Hill reported, the U.S. State Department criticized Israel for approving 1,200 new settlement homes on disputed lands on the eve of resuming long-stalled peace talks, saying, "We do not accept the legitimacy of continued settlement activity." The settlement issue remains unresolved and continues to create problems between America and Israel. In early 2015 came this. The U.S. criticized Israel's publication of tenders for 450 new settlement housing units, with State Department spokeswoman saying the move was deeply concerning and would further isolate Israel. Worse is Iran. Its leadership repeatedly vows to wipe Israel off the map. Israel has contemplated striking Iran's nuclear sites as a matter of survival for the tiny nation. Israel believes diplomacy has failed and the time for action is approaching. Meanwhile, America aggressively pursued a diplomatic solution to Iran's nuclear program. In September 2013, President Obama phoned Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, a first between leaders of these nations since 1979. This led to extensive negotiations to halt Iran's nuclear program involving China, France, Russia, the UK, and Germany, led by the United States. Agreement was reached July 14th. The next day's headline of the Wall Street Journal read, "Iran deal ignites fierce fight," with photos of President Obama, President Rouhani, and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Israelis stand almost completely united against the agreement. Mr. Netanyahu has long been an outspoken critic of the Iran deal, and tensions between Washington and Jerusalem grew much worse when he addressed the U.S. Congress about Iran in March. Just before, an Associated Press article outlined how the speech greatly worsened a rocky relationship. For 6 years, President Barack Obama and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have been on a collision course over how to halt Iran's nuclear ambitions, a high-stakes endeavor both men see as a centerpiece of their legacies. The coming weeks will put the relationship between their countries to one of its toughest tests. Netanyahu is bound for Washington for an address aimed squarely at derailing Obama's cherished bid for a diplomatic deal with Tehran. At the same time, Secretary of State John Kerry and other international negotiators will be in Switzerland for talks with the Iranians, trying for a framework agreement before a late March deadline. The article continued with more recent history. Stopping Iran from building a nuclear bomb has become a defining challenge for both Obama and Netanyahu, yet one they have approached far differently. Also, the White House was furious when Netanyahu's government defied Obama and announced plans to construct new housing units in East Jerusalem while Biden was visiting Israel in 2010. Additional housing plans that year upended U.S. efforts to restart peace talks between the Israelis and Palestinians. The tension between Obama and Netanyahu was laid bare in an unusually public manner during an Oval Office meeting in 2011. In front of a crowd of journalists, the Prime Minister lectured Obama at length on Israel's history and dismissed the president's conditions for restarting peace talks. The public disagreements go on, including anger from the U.S. administration over statements Netanyahu made before his re-election that some think cast doubt on his commitment to a two-state solution. The result is many questioning how long the bond between Israel and the U.S. can hold. How much longer will Israel depend on America's approval for its decisions? How long will Israel wait before it feels it must act independently for its survival? And how long before America no longer supports Israel in the face of mounting pressure from the United Nations and European Union? To understand what Bible prophecy says about these brother nations, we must look to their pasts. Most know nothing about the true reason behind the connection these nations share. While both were built on Judeo-Christian values, millions don't realize God's Word plainly reveals their shared origin. The relationship began long before 1948, in fact, thousands of years ago. This is where ancient history enters. The world's greatest scholars don't know what happened to the tribes of Israel, one of which became the United States. And they don't know why it happened. The last picture in the Bible is Israel carried away into Assyria, only to disappear into history. How do historians and theologians explain this mystery? They make the great wrong assumption that all Israelites are Jews. This is not true. First, the Jews are only 1/12 of Israel. They sprang from Jacob's son Judah. There were 11 other sons. This basic understanding has become lost to the world, Jews included. Most think the term Jews is synonymous with all the tribes of Israel because they never investigate what the Bible actually says. The very first place the term Jews is found describes a war occurring between the Jews and Israel. Let's read it. Pekah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to war, and they besieged Ahaz, king of Judah, but could not overcome him. At that time, Rezin, king of Syria, recovered Elath to Syria and drove the Jews from Elath. This was not Jews fighting Jews. Most people have no idea Israel had become divided into different nations, two separate kingdoms. When King Solomon died, Israel rebelled against oppressive taxes he had imposed. His son Rehoboam was advised to reduce taxes to stop a revolt developing under a high-ranking leader named Jeroboam, appointed by Solomon. Instead, Rehoboam listened to younger advisors who told him to raise taxes. The result? 10 tribes rebelled, leaving only Judah and Benjamin loyal to Rehoboam. These tribes pulled away from Jerusalem, their capital, much like the Old South seceded from the American Union in 1861. Two kingdoms emerged, the house of Israel in the north and house of Judah in the south, with separate capitals, Samaria, Israel, and Jerusalem, Judah. I live in Ohio, one of 50 American states. While I am an American, as are all Ohioans, not all Americans are Ohioans. Some are Californians, others New Yorkers or Floridians, and so on. The point? All Jews are Israelites, but not all Israelites are Jews. Jews form a small percent of the total Israelites. After the 12 tribes split, Jeroboam led the northern 10 tribes. He consolidated his kingdom, ensuring it would never reunite with Judah and Benjamin. And he created a new religious system to distance his tribes from worshiping at Jerusalem. Notice, and the Israelites left all the commandments of the Lord their God and made molten images and served Baal. Those following Jeroboam worshiped the pagan Baal, the lord of the sun, or sun god. Jeroboam was the only king in Israel's history to actually force the people to sin. Notice again, Jeroboam drove Israel from following the Lord and made them sin a great sin. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them. Their chief sins were Sabbath breaking and idolatry. It was these that put them into slavery. The result? The Lord removed Israel out of his sight. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria. This was 721 to 718 BC, with Assyria carrying them far from their homeland. Read 2 Kings 17 and verse 6. Some generations later, the Babylonian or Chaldean Empire came to power under Nebuchadnezzar. They entered Judah and slowly took Jewish captives to what is now Iraq through the period from 604 to 585 BC. Soon after Israel's captivity began, the Assyrians migrated to northern Europe and settled in what is now modern Germany. They took most of their Israelite slaves with them, eventually allowing them to migrate further north and west and to regain independence. They settled in northwestern Europe, including the British Isles and Scandinavia. A central question arises. How did the house of Israel become lost to themselves and to the world? What happened? There is an all-important reason the 10 tribes lost their identity and Judah did not. God made a special covenant with Israel in Exodus 31 regarding his Sabbath. He explained that his purpose was that the Sabbath sanctifies those who keep it, setting them apart as belonging to or being owned by God. In the briefest terms, those who observe the Sabbath are signified as God's people. They are also publicly identified as people who keep the commandments. Since most nations outlaw stealing, murder, lying, or perjury, etc., obedience to most of the other commandments doesn't identify one as God's servant. The Sabbath does. It is a sign that people are of God, since no human would ever think or choose to keep this law without it having been revealed by God. The story behind Israel's loss of identity is astonishing and known to almost none for millennia. Yet these modern nations need never have lost sight of their identity. A choice they made caused this. While people denigrate and sneer at the Sabbath as merely Jewish, it is binding on far more people than the small number who descended from Judah. Israel stopped keeping God's Sabbath and lost the national sign that identified them. While the modern nations of both the West and Judah have fallen into many other national sins that have caused God to pull away and remove his blessings, it was the Sabbath that preserved their identity. Once in captivity, they ceased functioning as a nation with a king and a government. Eventually, many took on the Assyrian language, losing track of their native Hebrew tongue. They were slaves who became lost to history. Even historians no longer recognize them. But the modern world does know who the Jews are. Why? They retained the Sabbath. They don't keep it holy and as God instructed, but they have not switched to Sunday as have professing Christians. They have generally retained the Sabbath, so they know who they are. As one historian put it, more than the Jews having kept the Sabbath has kept the Jews. Amazingly, almost no one talks or wonders about the identity of the other tribes. Yet today they number between 500 and 600 million. These nations have been deceived into believing themselves Gentiles. They're not. They are Israelitish brothers of the Jews. For instance, America is the tribe of Manasseh, and Britain descends from Ephraim, Joseph's sons. Notice Genesis 48. Joseph said unto his father, Jacob, Not so, my father, for this Manasseh is the firstborn. Put your right hand upon his head. He was blessing them. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother, Ephraim, modern Britain, shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations, the British Empire. And he blessed them that day, saying, In you shall Israel bless, saying, God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Israel's birthright was not just general to both grandsons. Separate blessings came to each. The great, wealthy, dominant single nation of Genesis 35:11 would descend and grow from Manasseh, America. The even greater, wealthier, more dominant company of nations, here called a multitude of nations, would spring from Ephraim, once known as Great Britain. The promise of enormous material prosperity, possession of their enemies' gates, enjoyment of the fatness of the earth, and other physical blessings were to go to Manasseh and Ephraim, America and Britain today. It is America and Britain that embody the blessings to and name of Israel more than the other tribes. Much more than simple friends or allies, the facts of history reveal the United States and Middle Eastern nation of Israel are brothers. This explains their long, unique relationship. To learn more about the incredible history of the United States and Britain and what the Bible reveals about their future, read my book, America and Britain in Prophecy. With this background, we're ready to more closely examine Zechariah's prophecy. Zechariah is one of the most venerated prophets in Israel today. I've twice been to his tomb in Jerusalem. Incredibly, although he's honored by modern Jews, he was put to death by Jews of his time right in front of the Second Temple. Today, almost no one in Israel talks of his many prophecies, never mind understands them. Yet there sits his very prominent tomb. Chapter 11 is also not discussed today, even among supposed prophecy experts. There have been a few crazy opinions about it, but all of them make no sense and miss the truth of what God plans to do. The two main elements in Zechariah 11 are summarized in what are staffs that God calls beauty, or more correctly, grace, and bands. Let's read verse 7. I took unto me, God says, two staves. The one I called beauty, or grace, and the other I called bands. And I fed, the Hebrew is shepherded, the flock, his people. God describes himself as lifting two staffs together, one depicting his end-time church, the other the modern tribes of Israel. He intends to address two great problems at once. His divided flock is to be unified. The nations of Israel are scheduled to be divided. God plans to bring unity where there was division and division where there was unity. The prophecy actually begins in verse 3. Let's read and learn how. There is a voice of the howling of the shepherds, for their glory is spoiled. A voice of the roaring of young lions, for the pride of Jordan is spoiled. The first half of this verse relates to God's people and involves the staff grace, an unrelated subject. The second half speaks to Judah and bands. In Genesis 49:9, God depicts the Israelite tribe of Judah as a lion's whelp, or young lion. Young lions here refers to Israeli officers and other officials in anguish over loss of support, friendship, and political connection from the rest of the modern nations of Israel, but chiefly America. Roaring means a rumbling or moan, roaring. A powerful army belonging to a small but proud nation will see its pride spoiled. Now all-important verse 14, which becomes another proof Israel and Judah are not the same. God says, "Then I cut asunder my other staff, even bands, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel." Verse 14 is so straightforward it requires little explanation. There is a bond between tiny Judah and the modern Western nations constituting the other Israelite tribes. It is this verse that explains the shocking headlines we saw. But God foretold a time when this relationship would be broken by Him. Key terms shed light on what God will do. Cut asunder means to fell a tree or to destroy. Obviously, if someone cuts down a tree, they have destroyed it. Think. People use axes to fell trees. It takes many blows depending on the tree's age and size. The brotherhood between the U.S. and Judah is at least 67 years old, tracing to America's 1948 recognition of Israel, or more accurately, 4,000 years old. This is an old tree. It has taken many blows to have it now near collapse. The word translated bands means a twisted cord. God describes an unraveling relationship with one strand after another being cut. This sundering did not happen all at once, but gradually over time. Yet there will come one moment when God will very obviously snap His staff bands. Notice it is brotherhood between Israel and Judah, not friendship or alliance, although it has been this. This is the only place in the Bible this Hebrew word for brotherhood is found. It comes from the root word brother. A verse in Proverbs expands on this fraternal bond. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Understand, there's no need to speculate about whether the disintegrating relationship between the U.S. and Israel is the fault of one or both countries or their leaders. God says He is doing this. No politician on either side can stop it. Don't take sides. True Christians don't take political positions. Adversity for these brothers means the relationship ends. Why is God doing this? He is unhappy with His people. He wants their attention. This is only the beginning of trouble for Judah and the nations of the West. America and Britain in prophecy shows why both sides will pay a terrible price for their many national sins. Now, wonderful news. The prophet Ezekiel describes how God will rejoin the two broken halves of His staff. Son of man, Ezekiel, take you one stick and write upon it, for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, including Manasseh, America, and for all the house of Israel, his companions, and join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in your hand. And when the children of your people shall speak unto you, saying, Will you not show us what you mean by these? Say to them, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the other tribes of Israel his fellows, and will put them with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one stick or staff in my hand. Ezekiel's prophecy continues with, I, God, will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they are gone, into one last horrific captivity just ahead, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel. And one king shall be king to them all, and they shall be no more two nations, Judah and Israel. Neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their God. And David my servant shall be king over them. And they all shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. The prophet Jeremiah wrote of this reunion. He also makes plain that Israel and Judah are not the same people. In those days, the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, and they shall come together. American Britain in Prophecy outlines much more of what the future holds for America, Israel, and Britain. This vital book uses plain facts of history and biblical keys to unlock crucial knowledge of global events soon to smash into an unsuspecting world. Keep watching world events unfold, and don't stop watching the world to come. God will soon shatter the historic alliance between the nations of Western Europe, America, and Judah. Zechariah's prophecy will be fulfilled very soon. Until next time, this is David C. Pack saying goodbye, friends.
This program was made available by Restored Church of God members and donors from around the globe. Explore our vast library of literature and other World to Come programs, which are all made available free of charge. To order literature featured in this program, call toll-free 1-855-828-4646. That number again, 1-855-828-4646.